This week on Sando's Garage, routing and electrical work. Welcome back to another episode number 3. This week we're going to be focused on the routing I did using the 9mm MDF and a 3mm router piece. Just fitting it now to my Ryobi trimmer. And it's important that you have it nice and tight so it doesn't come out, fling away. And what I also did, I always measure the depth, and I always use approximately 6 to 7 mil. I use a set square just to get the depth right on the router before you start any work. And keep in mind that it protrudes out the bottom and you can easily snap that off if you're not careful. So tighten it up and let's get it ready. Also, what comes with the Ryobi trimmer is this side bracket. It screws onto the side. You can run along a timber edge, which is great for your straight pieces of track. And it's fully adjustable to the width, and you determine that width of your track. I normally screw my timber to the bench. I've been using sheets of MDF 1200 by 600. I usually draw the track first in pencil where I want it to go. I've built mine in sections, and it's just a matter of putting your router piece in for your curves and then using your router to cut the groove. Then for the edge piece, just add that jig onto the side of it, and you can run parallel along with the edge of the timber. Now what I did when I was building my track, I just drilled some holes in a ruler, roughly how wide I wanted my track, the edges of the track to the groove. And I just used a ruler for my curves. Now it all depends on your room size, how you want your curves, how you want them, the sharpness, the curvature. There's also a jig that sometimes I use too. You can just screw that down and you run your router along the edge of it. Pretty simple. You can come up with any groove, any type of combination of curve you wanted, you could easily do. This particular piece was just an offcut I found around, but you could easily turn it into a brace for a curve. Once I was pretty happy with my track, I cut it out with a jigsaw, and then I use a countersunk drill piece which also drills the hole. This is so I can screw in an adaptive piece so I can add my next section of track onto. It gives you a nice smooth transition between the two pieces. Then just run a test car over it. Make sure the groove as well and the guide on the cars runs smoothly, no hiccups. Now when you go to add your next section of track, this is what I used. So I'd screw it on to the brace I put underneath, screw that together, and just using your router or your trimmer, just go over the groove onto the next section of track. I just went about 10 mil both sides, and unscrew it, and then you can draw on your next section of track or remeasure it however you want. Now the big thing, you want to fully paint your track before you start laying any copper tape. Have it weathered, whatever you want to do, your curves, all of it painted before you start any copper tape, because the copper tape really is the final part. As mentioned before, I do use the 5mm copper tape. I just brought it off eBay. Just make sure it's a conductive tape. And this is how I laid it out. It's a bit fiddly. Takes a bit of effort to do. Just take your time. It's almost like a foil. As soon as you pull it too hard, it'll just break. But as we saw in the previous video, just overlap it by 10 or 20mm. Pierce it with a knife. And you can still allow that electricity to flow through. Just take your time. Now adding power to the track. There's many different ways you could do this. This is the particular way I chose to do it. I was an electronics technician in a previous job. So I drilled a hole each side of the copper tape. And then I got myself a chisel and pierced each section so I can allow a 90-degree angle of the wire to sit in there, and then I'll solder that groove to make a reasonably flat surface so the cars run over while providing the electricity to both sides of the track. It is fiddly. I tin the wires first and then just bent them 90 degree. I think I used about 1mm. Yeah, just strip those wires about 5mm and then tin each side, just a little bit of tinning, and that'll make it so much easier to just bend 90 degrees and then feed it through the two holes. Keep a note that your positive and negative wires, which track it goes on, which lane it goes on, so you don't get confused and short the circuit. Then just feed the wires through, and then where that groove, where you hit it with the chisel, I feed that wire into that groove and then just cover it with a bit of solder. Make sure it's a reasonably flat surface, and it'll bond to that copper tape straight away. Keeping in mind you want a red wire for one side, a black wire for the other side. So positive and negative. Just take your time soldering. It can be tricky if you haven't done before. A little goes a long way. So just a little amount. And if you do have a bit of overlap sitting on the copper tape, it's just a matter of getting the soldering iron again and just almost brushing it away, and that'll smooth it off. But that's basically it. That's for one side of the track anyway. That's my sample, and that's how I did it. Now a few people ask me how I wired it to the transformer. So this is underneath the track, and I wired it into a terminal block, and with the alligator clips, clip that into the front of the transformer, which I just brought on Amazon. It's a variable volt transformer, up to 30 volts. Pretty easy to work. And there's the wiring diagram I use for my two controllers on my 2 lanes of track. Normally, I just run with 7 volts and the cars run fine. Now for the pit area, I haven't quite worked out how I'm going to make these lane changes yet. So I've still got a temporary block in there at the moment just so I can run circuits around the track. And basically you need to cut the copper tape so it doesn't short the circuit. So as a sample there, you don't want a positive to hit another positive in another lane, as it'll just short it, or a negative and a negative. That's why I've left the gaps, as you can see, between the lanes. And I wired pieces of wire under the track, looped it under to the desired lanes to keep that positive and the negative on those particular lanes. This is tricky. I wasn't going to have a pit lane, but I thought further down the track, let's try it. Let's give it a go. So as you can see, the temporary blocks are in at the moment, so I can just run circuits around the track. And then you want to make sure your car runs over it quite smoothly with no hiccups. The pit lane is live, it is wired up, but like I said before, I just got to make those lane changes, work out how I'm going to do that, and I'll have a live pit lane. And for the exit of the pits, very similar to the entry. I didn't wire it up as the cars have got momentum coming out of that pit area. And my layout's a lot different to most. It is built in sections, like I said, with the MDF. It's only in a small room. A lot of people build it a lot different ways than what I do. Hopefully in the next episode, start working on this pit lane, this pit building. And thanks for following. Like and subscribe, and hope to bring out more content.